He comes all the way from Stockholm, Sweden. He's known as Ivan on Tech, and he is here like an atomic clock. Put it up for Ivan on Tech, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Good to be here. And good to speak about what I love the most, namely Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the blockchain. And also we're going to speak about money. We're going to speak about why open digital borderless currencies such as Bitcoin are so important in order to eradicate poverty, in order to eradicate corruption and so many different things. Alright, so this speech will be about currencies, about money, and why money is so important. The fact that money works is so important for societies to develop and for people to prosper. And obviously Bitcoin is this thing that has been making a lot of noise recently in the past few years. And for some time it's just been this thing that few people talked about on the internet. It was just something for libertarians, something for anarchists. Then we saw the bubble of 2017 and 18, and now we're finally seeing serious adoption. So for example, you see Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter and Square, truly pushing Bitcoin in his app and in his businesses, and really being an advocate for Bitcoin. At the same time, I usually give talks in Europe or in the US, and I always ask this question. How many of you feel that Bitcoin is dirty? I always ask you this, and nobody raised up any hands. But when you ask this question in EU, or in the US, or in other parts of the world where the financial system is stable, it's been stable for many years, people think that Bitcoin is dirty. They don't really see any point in Bitcoin. They don't really see any applications. While in other parts of the world, such as Asia and others, the use case is much clearer, and this is something that we're going to discuss more today. And I think it's important to know that Bitcoin is saving a lot of lives already. So for example, this is an article from the New York Times from earlier this year, where there was this person that basically explained how Bitcoin saved his life in Venezuela, where, as you all know, they have millions of percent of inflation, and not a joke, it sounds like some kind of a joke, millions of percent of inflation, but it is completely true. But by having this new asset, that is worldwide digital money, he was able to get out and also save his family. So my personal own story started in 2013 when it comes to Bitcoin. That is when I learned about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And today I run one of the biggest YouTube channels when it comes to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And we've grown to over 200,000 subscribers already. And I had the great pleasure to travel around and speak about Bitcoin on many other events, live events, conferences, but also appear on television. So you'll see a picture here with me on Israeli television, further up, just so that you know who I am and why I'm speaking to you here. And also we're visiting a lot of companies. So here's, by the way, an example from Belgium, where we visited a very big textile company and educated them about how blockchain can be applied in their business. So today we're going to speak about Bitcoin, blockchain, business, and also how it applies when it comes to development and when it comes to these sustainability developments that the UN has. And Bitcoin started in 2008. So I got into Bitcoin in 2013, but I was already 5 years too late, so to speak, if you compare it to when Bitcoin started. So Bitcoin started in 2008. And the interesting thing with how Bitcoin started is how it was distributed and how first people found out about Bitcoin. Because it was published as a PDF, as a so-called white paper on the internet, completely anonymously. So this guy called Satoshi Nakamoto, whether it's a person, whether it's a group of people, whether it is he or she, we don't know, but somebody under this pseudonym, Satoshi Nakamoto, published this technical paper where they described how such a system could be built, how you can build a system that is digital cash, that is not being controlled by any central bank, that is not being controlled by any entity. It works 24/7, and nobody can shut it down. So this was the brilliant, this borderless digital cash. An important thing with Bitcoin also is that there will only be 21 Bitcoin in existence. So everyone knows that there is no way for a central government, for a central bank, for a central entity to inflate the supply of Bitcoin. And this is obviously a big issue in countries where financial systems are not working as they should, where the government takes on a debt that they really cannot pay back, or if they have some big projects and they get in a bad situation with their finances, at the end of the day, it is the population that pays it. Because normal fiat currencies can obviously be inflated at any time. And so with Bitcoin being only 21 million, everyone is feeling secure in the fact that mathematically it's impossible to inflate it. Mathematically it's completely impossible to inflate it. And everyone knows how Bitcoin works because the white paper explained it. So Bitcoin is open source, meaning that anyone in the world can read the source code, understand it, and ensure that it is working correctly. So therefore, there is no trust involved. Therefore, we call Bitcoin trustless. You don't have to trust it. You can verify it. You can verify the software, you can verify how it works. Therefore, there is no central entity that is being in the middle and that everybody trusts. And also, usually, as I said, I give this talk in US and in Sweden and in the EU, and I always ask them, so you all have these payment apps, like the one that was on the previous slides. It is a very popular payment app in Sweden called Swish, and you can transfer money very quickly. And so people always ask me, but hey, I have Swish, so why should I care about this? But then, as you can see on the next slide right here, most people in this world do not actually have a bank account. So 1.7 billion people in this world do not have access to a bank account. I'm not really sure how the situation is in Malaysia. Do all of you guys have a bank account? Anyone who is without a bank account? Nobody here. But keep in mind that 1.7 billion people in this world do not have a bank account. And also I noticed you guys have Grab, so you have Grab, Cash. What other apps do you use for transferring money? Is it popular? Which one?
Touch and go.
Touch and go. So you see, you're also at a level where people might start questioning what is Bitcoin. But realize 1.7 billion people are living in this world without a bank account. And here we have some stats about different countries. So Philippines for 6 million, Brazil, the big ones are India, Pakistan, China, Indonesia. But China is really catching up with WeChat and their digital payments as well. But still, it is a big problem. And you understand that when you don't have a bank account, you are at a disadvantage. Probably, if you live in a country where you don't have a bank account, probably the country is not very developed and you don't have a lot of opportunities, because it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, if you have the best team in the world, you want to build some kind of startup, some kind of product, if you cannot send and receive money internationally, you can probably not get any investments. You can probably not serve clients in other countries. And when you're not able to do that, you're not able to enrich your country. So by being innovative, by bringing value to the world, that's how people usually enrich their countries. But if you don't even have a bank account, you don't have access to the financial system, you're living in financial exclusion, suddenly you do not have that opportunity. So financial exclusion is actually one of the biggest reasons for poverty in this world, when people cannot receive and send international border transactions. And it is so important. It is so important to me to discuss this because you see it all across the world, where you are either relying on middlemen, such as the Western Union and others that take a huge cut of the transaction, or you're simply not able to do anything internationally. Moving on to next slide. And the important thing with Bitcoin is that there's no need to be a bank customer. Anyone with a phone and internet connection can start receiving and sending money to anyone else in the world. And this is key because banks might not accept you. In many countries there is simply no good banking infrastructure because banks don't really see any point in going to some parts of the world because it's simply not profitable for them. So that is a very important thing. No need to be a bank customer. You can send and receive payments wherever you want. Moving on. And obviously many people ask, how does it work? How can you have such a system where we have money but still nobody controls it? Nobody makes sure that it is being done correctly. People ask me, okay, but if it is digital cash, can't I just copy and paste my cash? I have 100 Bitcoin, then I copy paste, I have 200 because that is how People usually perceive things in the digital world, that the digital things are easily replicatable. But the whole thing with Bitcoin is that it is being built on this data structure called the blockchain. And if you really think about how Bitcoin is being built up, it's a network of computers. So it is this network of computers. You can be one of these computers. Anyone can just connect and be part of this network. And the whole idea here is that we all have a copy of the so-called blockchain. So what is a blockchain? A blockchain, really, you can think about it as a digital stone. So when you write something on a stone, you cannot move it. So you can write things on the stone and it will be there forever. So blockchain is this data structure that allows us to insert information and makes it impossible to remove it. And in Bitcoin, we store all transactions that ever happened on the Bitcoin network in the blockchain. So that if you say to me that you have 1 billion Bitcoin, we can all see on the blockchain in the database of transactions that you have never received that amount. So you cannot not have that many Bitcoin. And as you see this network, if we have one person right here who starts lying, who starts saying that, hey, I have all this money, but everyone else can clearly see in this blockchain, this database with all transactions that they are lying, then they will simply stop talking to that computer. So it's some technical insights into how this works, but simply put, it is a network of computers. Everyone has a copy of this database. This database works so that you can only insert transactions, you can never remove them. And thus, we are creating something immutable. We're having this immutable data structure with transactions, and this is what everyone uses in order to verify. So you don't trust, you verify. You don't have to trust me when I tell you that I have 100 Bitcoin. You can verify yourself by looking into the blockchain. And this blockchain is public information. Anyone can check it. Anyone can see how many transactions happened, how much money all actors have. And so, as Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, said, Bitcoin is a remarkable cryptographic achievement, and that the ability to create something that is not duplicable in the digital world has enormous value. So, the true innovation with Bitcoin is that for the first time ever, you cannot just copy-paste. We have something digital, but also scarce. So digital scarcity is what Satoshi Nakamoto, this creator of Bitcoin, gave to the world. And he's still, by the way, anonymous. He or she or the group. We still don't know exactly who that is. Also, when we're speaking about how Bitcoin helps the world, we spoke how it removes financial exclusion. Now anyone is part of the global economy. It removes the risk of hyperinflation because we all know that only 21 million Bitcoin will be in existence. Also, we have to talk about corruption because, as I mentioned, all funds on the blockchain can be 100% transparent. If you know the addresses of your government officials or of your different ministries in your country, you can follow the transactions and you can ensure that they're not being corrupt, that they're not spending money on something that they shouldn't be spending into. So personally, I come from Belarus. I have a family in Russia as well, and corruption is a big issue. You have some building or something that is being built, but in reality, you do see corrupt officials having a big cut of that construction. They try to funnel the money from the construction into their own pockets. Unfortunately, it's the case in many other countries as well. And the reason is because the current financial system is very, very opaque. For you and me, it's very difficult to see how the money is moving. And it's very difficult for us to audit it. So, with Bitcoin, with blockchain, with cryptocurrencies, for the first time, you can have 100% publicly audited transactions. Whether it is a company, whether it is a government, whatever you want. And so, some people think that Bitcoin is anonymous. And while it is true that it can be anonymous, it can also be 100% transparent, as long as you know the identities of the people who hold the addresses. But if you want to discuss that, we can take some questions at the end. So let's move on. Also, we discussed that you have Bitcoin, you have this blockchain, which is the data structure, and another important way we can describe this in is to compare it with the internet. Because what the internet did is that it opened up the information to the world. Now anyone can get any information that they want at the click of a button, very quickly, very cheaply. So blockchain is doing the same thing, but with financial industries, with money. So blockchain is open sourcing money, so that if you want, you can build any financial application you want. If you want, you can audit. If you want, you can do whatever you want on this new open platform. And obviously, when you have so much information being open sourced, it needs to be organized. And for example, Google understands it very, very well, because they are already building search engines for cryptocurrencies and for blockchain-based systems, because all of this information is going to be open sooner or later. And this development is accelerating as we speak. So let's move on to next. And obviously we're here at the UN, and this talk is together with the UN, so I thought it was very important as well that sooner or later, some kind of world organization, whether it's UN or something else, they will make it mandatory for governments to use blockchain for their business. Because at the end of the day, if you're not using blockchain, what do you have to hide? That is the biggest question we need to be asking ourselves and our governments. Why wouldn't you be using blockchain for your transactions? Why wouldn't you want us to have a traceable method of tracking you? So this is very important. And finally, the important thing with Bitcoin as well is that it is unconfiscatable. And this is more important than many people realize. And it's when you're poor, but also when you're rich. I mean, this thing that Bitcoin is unconfiscatable is important for everyone. Because at the end of the day, if you're living in a country where the system is not very stable, you don't know if you really own your money. You don't know if you can withdraw it however you want. We recently saw Argentina imposing capital controls on their citizens, so you can maximum withdraw a few $100s per month, something like that. Whenever the financial system is in a bad shape in the country, always there are capital controls. So when you look at your bank account, just realize it's not really your money, because at the end of the day, you might not be able to use it however you want. And obviously Venezuela is the most famous example. Try to get money out of Venezuela, it will not really work. China is a maybe even bigger example, because there actually the richer population gets worried, because if you have a few million, how can you be sure that you actually can use them in the ways you want? So it's both when you're poor, when you're middle class, when you're upper class. You need to be thinking that, hey, the money you have in your bank account, you don't own it. And Bitcoin is this first asset that if you want, you will always, 100%, whether it's day or night, whether it's Monday or Friday, whether it's after banking hours, you will always be able to send and receive it. And it is so, so important. Moving on. Hyperinflation, we mentioned that. Let's continue. We mentioned millions of percent of inflation in Venezuela. Finally, I have some tips. So for all of you who are interested, check out this book, The Bitcoin Standard. You will really learn a lot. If there is anywhere you want to start, please start here. You will learn all about how the central banking system works right now and how Bitcoin fits in. Also, they talk a bit about how the central banking system literally takes money from the poor and give it to the rich. If you want, we can discuss it in the Q&A as well. I don't think I have a lot of time left. This is a bit Swedish, because Sweden is doing the first national digital currency. At least they started as one of the first, but now you see China, you see Turkey, you see so many other countries trying to do it as well, but Sweden was one of the first. So usually when I do this talk in Sweden, we discuss a bit about this e-krona project. We can move on. And then also we talk about why it's more than Bitcoin. But I think I will cut the presentation here, because I want to only focus on Bitcoin in this one. If you guys have questions, I don't know, if we have time for Q&A, we can discuss more. Thank you so much everyone for listening. And yes, thank you.